Hello, listeners. Before we start, I just want to remind you, you can listen to Nighttime early and ad-free on Amazon Music. Include it with Prime.
A desperate search is underway tonight in Nova Scotia. Two siblings, aged just 4 and 6, are believed to have wandered away from their home on Friday morning and haven't been seen since.
I want to hold them, and I want them home.
I mean, everywhere I go, people stare. That's something I have to live with until, the truth makes its way out, and the truth always makes its way out.
You are listening to the Nighttime Podcast.
It's now been over 4 weeks since 4-year-old Jack and his 6-year-old sister, Lilly Sullivan, were first reported missing from their rural Nova Scotia home. As we detailed in a series of previous Nighttime episodes, the children's mother and stepfather told police that when they awoke at about 10 a.m. on Friday, May 2nd, Lilly and Jack were gone. Since then, this case has twisted and turned in nearly every direction and has become a topic of both concern and conversation for people all over the world. And as expected, over the past week, the story has evolved again in several significant ways. The children's stepfather, Daniel Martell, has shared details of the polygraph test he'd been calling for since public suspicions found their way directed towards him. The RCMP have clarified details of the timeline by answering the question, when were the children seen by someone other than their family? There were also several notable news reports covering the case. And of course, there's been yet another wave of ground searching. And in this episode, Madelayne Klein and I will again talk our way through all of that and more. So let's get into it. Tonight, in this episode of Nighttime, we'll discuss all of the developments that played out during the 4th week of the search for Jack and Lilly Sullivan.
Melissa Scott's trail cameras might contain clues about the disappearance of Lilly and Jack Sullivan. RCMP asked her for days of footage as the investigation into the missing children approaches the 3-week mark. She says RCMP major crimes officers came to her home this week, asking for everything on her 7 cameras, starting April 27th, 5 days before the kids were reported missing.
Ms. Madelayne Klein.
Hello. Cheers.
Cheers.
I'm using my favorite coffee mug.
What is it?
It's got a crocodile on it and it says, "Oh snap."
Okay, well, and that makes you happy?
I guess.
Let's get into it. We're here to discuss the 4th week of the search for Jack and Lilly Sullivan. This story has continued to twist and turn in every direction. The amount of online discourse, clickbait, nonsense has only ramped up. But we are continuing to receive updates from the RCMP and people close to this case. If you read online, one criticism you'll always see is that people are complaining about the speed of this investigation. I think after the first few days passed, when the children weren't found, I think it's changed gears to the type of investigation that doesn't happen overnight. And, 4 weeks does seem like a long time, but a rushed investigation is an investigation that ends in dropped charges or acquittals or retrials. And I think whatever's happening in this case, I think people are being very careful about it. But all that to say, what is your broad overview of 4 weeks into this case?
Yeah, a month tomorrow. It's June 1st right now. I don't know. I've gone so back and forth on so many things about this case over the last 4 weeks. 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, let's say, I thought we'll have answers in 2 or 3 months. And then a week later, I was like, oh no, they're going to solve this right away. So as of 2 weeks ago, I thought we would have answers by now. Mm-hmm. And we don't.
Yeah. But I think one thing you and I agree on at least is that I think the idea that they wandered off and were just in the woods, in the area, the vicinity of their home, and search and rescue teams have just not been able to find them. Every day that passes, I feel like that outcome is less and less likely.
But now new recent updates have me thinking, well, maybe they are.
Every time we do one of these weekly updates, there's all this stuff that makes it seem like the investigation is turning in a different direction, but then it just finds a way to go right back to the beginning. That's what will happen tonight. But I think we now have enough updates that we can really get a good look at how the RCMP is tackling this case. But I think what's confusing is they're not just tackling it from one direction. I think while the major crimes team is doing the more traditional style police investigation behind the scenes, it's almost like there's a whole separate investigation that is searching for children who wandered off. So I think there's kind of dual things happening. And when you look at the updates, I think you'll see that. So let's get into it here. Where we left off last week, the most significant update was the RCMP's request for trail cam footage from a home in a neighboring community. Aside from the distance between the children's home and the location where the trail cams were, what made the request so surprising is that the RCMP specifically requested footage that covered the days prior to the children being reported missing. But if you remember, the children were reported missing on Friday, May 2nd, but they didn't attend school on the Wednesday and Thursday prior to that. And of course, they wouldn't have been at school on Friday. Because of that, from the beginning, many have questioned the parents' version of the story and speculated that maybe something happened to the children before they were reported missing. And it seemed like the RCMP investigating the timeline prior to the missing persons report only fueled those theories. Well, it seems now that the RCMP have tried to cool that fire with a press release that clarifies the timeline of the children's disappearance by revealing exactly when the kids were last seen by someone other than family. Before we play the clip of the RCMP's press release on the case, something we've talked about from the beginning is, and I think even in our, probably 15 minutes into our first episode on this case, we said ourselves, I would just really like to know when the kids were seen by someone other than their parents. It's unusual that they weren't in school for a few days prior.
It's terrible timing and luck, the parents' part, I guess. Your kids go missing on Friday and no one's seen them since Wednesday. That's not a good look, right?
Yeah, it's almost like, someone, your enemy is murdered and the cop's like, where were you last night? And you're like, well, I was home alone on the couch watching a movie. My phone was dead, so I wasn't using that, and nobody see me. And it's like, if that's the truth, you must just be like, oh my God. This is like the parent of a missing child equivalent to that. But all that to say, of course, that discussion about when exactly they were seen by someone other than the parents, that's been brewing for ages. When the news came out last week that the RCMP were getting trail cam footage in the days prior to the disappearance of the children being reported, that discussion only ramped up. I believe that's why the RCMP did this press release. We're going to listen in on here.
As the missing persons investigation into the disappearance of Lilly and Jack Sullivan continues, we are appealing to the public for additional video footage. Investigators have collected hours of video from areas surrounding Lansdowne Station. Based on details gathered so far, we have confirmed that Lilly and Jack were observed in public with family members on the afternoon of May 1st. Investigators are now asking anyone who has dash cam footage or video along Garlick Road between noon on April 28th and noon on May 2nd to contact Northeast Nova RCMP Major Crime Unit. Investigators remain committed to exploring all possibilities surrounding the children's disappearance. To date, more than 355 tips have been received, and we are following up on the information provided. RCMP officers have also formally interviewed over 50 people, with more interviews planned in the coming days. Investigative work is ongoing following the large-scale ground and air search that began immediately after the children were reported missing on May 2nd. Hundreds of searchers, multiple dogs, a variety of drones, an underwater recovery team, and several aircraft scoured a heavily wooded 5.5 square kilometer area before search efforts were scaled back on May 7th. Any future searches will be determined based on the course of the investigation. RCMP officers from various teams are fully engaged in finding out what happened to Jack and Lilly. We're using all tools and resources to determine the circumstances of their disappearance. Anyone with information on the whereabouts of Jack and Lilly, or who has video footage to share with police, is asked to call the Northeast Nova Major Crimes Unit. To remain anonymous, you can also contact Nova Scotia Crime Stoppers.
So first off, I believe that press release or that press conference or that press statement was specifically to get in front of the discussion about why are they asking for video prior to the kids disappearing? Because they don't give a lot of information. They just, concerning the timeline, they just say the children were observed Thursday, May 1st, the day before they were reported missing, but in the public, but when they were in the company of their family. So they don't say specifically who they were with or where they were, but my understanding is that it's actually like video surveillance that they receive. So there's no question that the afternoon, the day before they went missing, Thursday, May 1st, the children were alive and well with family.
Well, and they wouldn't release that information without making damn sure.
Yeah.
Like I've seen a lot of comments like, well, who said they saw them, or, what kind of confirmation do they have? It's like the RCMP is not going to announce that there's a confirmed sighting of them on the 1st without concrete evidence.
Exactly. Yeah. They're not just taking someone's word for it.
Exactly.
No, the kids were alive and well Thursday. So that silences at least some of the conversation about this idea that something happened to them, like Tuesday night or something, and the parents spent these days trying to cover up this horrible crime or accident or something. Whatever happened between Thursday afternoon and the morning that they were reported missing. So I think that is now set in stone. And I believe, like I said, I think the RCMP only shared that information to silence the discussion about something happened well prior to it. It's the only reason they would release that information, because it doesn't give really any value to the public to know that, other than to stop it with the accusations that something happened days prior. But
right.
But there are some other interesting points in that press release. They again requested video footage, this time in the form of dash cam footage in the days prior to the disappearance. So again, it mystifies me, because if the kids were alive and well on Thursday afternoon of May 1st, the day before they were reported missing, then what value does footage of the days prior give the police, unless they're working on the theory that someone was in that area and did harm to the kids?
Right. Yeah, maybe they're not looking for like the kids anymore. They're looking for people who shouldn't have been in the area or frequented the area the days prior.
But and that's where I get to this idea that it seems to be parallel investigations going on. One investigation that the public is getting hints of through the various statements the RCMP give is that there is some importance or significance to the vehicles that were in the area 3 or 4 days before these kids went missing. We can come up with a million reasons that could be, but that's something that is objectively important to the RCMP. They went to that neighboring community that we heard about last week and got trail cam footage covering days prior. They've now issued a press release specifically asking for people who would have been driving past there with dash cams to give that. So that is something they really want. And, how that fits into all this is a mystery, but I guess we don't know what direction that's going to go the days prior, what significance that's going to play, but there is some significance. Some other things in the press conference that were interesting was a glimpse at, I guess, just the state of the investigation. It sounds like they're now nearing 400 tips from the public about the case that are all being investigated. And they've also said, not that they're going to do, but they have conducted upwards of 50 interviews, with more scheduled. So this is a serious investigation.
Well, and I'm wondering if this is because it's such a high profile case, maybe this is just them dotting their I's and crossing their T's and trying to go down every avenue they possibly can just to essentially shut people up about the many rumors and all the speculation going on.
It could be, but these they describe them as 50 like official interviews, which doesn't seem like just asking a couple questions. I'm expecting these to be like sit down interviews, taking notes.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like a 4 and a 6-year-old kid, how is there even 50 people that they're connected with? Like how big is their family? It's not like they're from this community where like all the neighbors are on top of each other and close. At school, of course, they'd have like teacher, a social worker, some kind of guidance counselor-y sort of thing, whatever the elementary school equivalent of that would be. I'm just like 50 people. That's a wide net to be casting with plans to do more.
But remember, they have to follow up on every tip they receive. So maybe some of those interviews are from random tips that they've gotten about people that really have nothing to do with the case.
That's possible, yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. It's
The
strange.
other it's certainly strange. Another part of the news conference, and I want to just put a pin on this because we're going to come back to it. In describing the ground search, the RCMP spoke in depth, as we heard in that clip, about the helicopters, the ground team, the drones, the dogs, this wide area that they searched. It was 5.5 square kilometers around the house that they searched. They said as well, and they ended it by saying, any future ground searches will be done based on the results of our investigation, which kind of makes it sound like if we're going out searching anymore, it's because we have a good reason to search. We're not just walking through the woods looking anymore.
Right. They'll have a specific area.
A specific and a specific reason that brings them out there. So with all that said, let's take our first break. When we get back, we have a few more updates to talk about, as well as there's been a couple really interesting news reports on the case that we want to break down. So let's go to break. When we come back, we'll get into that. Now, Madelayne, in addition to breaking down the week's developments, we've also been listening in on some of the more substantial news reports. A global news piece that I'm about to share is one such piece, as it features Jim Hoskins, who's a retired former Major Crimes Unit staff sergeant. He talked to Global News and shared his insight on the case. He's been following it closely since the beginning. So hearing like an insider, although he's retired, he has the background to understand what's making this unique. Let's listen to Jim Hoskins.
They gave you a clue when they said no abduction. That's a big statement to make at this early in the game.
It's been 24 days since Lilly and Jack Sullivan were reported missing from their home in Lansdowne Station. Family members have speculated the children were taken, but police have remained adamant they do not believe the siblings were abducted. According to Nova Scotia's recently updated policing standards, abduction is defined as when a person under 18 years of age or a vulnerable person is taken without the permission of their legal guardian. Jim Hoskins is a retired HRP officer and former Major Crimes Staff Sergeant. Despite not working the Sullivan case himself or being privy to any information regarding RCMP's ongoing investigation, he can see only two remaining possibilities.
What I see from the outside, there's only two options here. Criminal involvement, search, they haven't found them yet. They legitimately got lost in the woods. I felt, okay, let's give them a couple days to see if these kids are just wandered off, because they're only 6 and 4. So are they lost? They'll find them, maybe. If not, let's see how far it goes. And I says, and if it goes beyond 2 or 3 days, uh-oh. That was my reaction. What's next? Uh-oh.
A feeling felt across the province that could be driving public obsession with this case.
Canada in 2024, there were just over 30,000 cases of missing children. The vast majority of those cases involve runaways or they involve teens. And actually about 90% of those cases are resolved within a 1-week period. So anytime cases deviate from that, right, I think that is going to draw in the public. And of course, there's the public's desire to see it resolved.
Despite rumors online of criminal motives and cover-ups, Lilly and Jack's stepfather, Daniel Martell, has refuted all claims of his involvement, offering to take a polygraph test. And Hoskins says there's still a chance the children are close by.
You can't write it off and say they're definitely not in the woods. I can still say you can get overlooked. You can overlook bodies.
Searchers were back in the woods near the home a week ago, but there have been no significant updates since. In all his years as a police officer, Hoskins says what strikes him most is the probability of something like this happening.
It's bizarre. If you ask me what was bizarre, I'd say in this case, 2 with this particular family. 2 are gone.
Even in listening to him, you can hear him kind of going back and forth between, what makes sense and what doesn't. But I think I agree. I have share a lot of the same feelings as him. As it's, after the first 2 or 3 days when they weren't found, I was thinking, this is not looking good. But they could still be out there, and they're still searching as if maybe they're out there, and that would make sense if maybe they were missed. But then again, it's 2 kids, not 1. So it's so conflicting to go to let yourself to think through what's logical and possible in this case.
Well, and the fact that nothing has been found, no trace of them.
Yeah, I think everybody has a hard time dealing with that. And One thing we know for sure is that the search in the woods surrounding the children's home isn't over, and we'll get into that a little bit later. I want to move on to the next development. In this one, anything that involves the children's stepfather, Daniel, or mother, Malaya, speaking to the press is interesting. Malaya, we've talked about many times, is she's only really had one press appearance, where it's Daniel is the one who is doing all the media on behalf of Lilly and Jack, it seems. And a lot of his media lately is not only calling for support and advocacy from people, but it's defending himself. We heard it last week. He defended himself against the allegations being made against him online. I think what he said was something to the effect of nothing is going to change these people's minds. I just hope, it's what I'm going to have to live with, and I just hope that we find Lilly and Jack. One thing he's been asking for since the beginning of this is things like, I want a drug test. I want the police to take my phone and search it and do forensic kind of testing on my phone. I also want a lie detector test or a polygraph test. Well, an update we have this week during the 4th week of the search for Jack and Lilly is that it seems that Daniel Martell did meet with the RCMP for a polygraph test. And although he's not sharing the full results of it, he did speak to Global News about his polygraph test, and he gave some hints as to what the result of it was. Let's listen in on Daniel's discussion about that. And this is an interesting one.
Just over a week ago, the road behind me was still swarming with search and rescue personnel as RCMP resumed their ground search for 6-year-old Lilly and 4-year-old Jack Sullivan, who first went missing 3 weeks ago in Lansdowne Station. Now, this has been a story that has dominated headlines across the country and beyond as people speculate and wonder about what could have happened to these two missing children. The children's stepfather, Daniel Martell, says he has been interviewed extensively since Lilly and Jack were first reported missing. You mentioned last time we chatted that you'd offered to do a polygraph test.
That is correct.
Has that already happened?
That has happened.
Right. And did you get results from that yet?
I do have results, and I don't know if I can share those results, but they were good in my favor, we'll say that.
Martell says he is glad the police have put out the additional call for footage and is again asking anyone with information to come forward. Despite not having had contact with the children's mother, Malaya, since May 3rd when she left the search area, he says an RCMP liaison has been assigned to keep them both informed as the investigation progresses.
Trust the RCMP word, and I mean, you don't have to trust my word, but I'm the only one doing media for Jack and Lilly, trying to keep the story alive and get them found.
According to RCMP, any future searches will be determined based on the course of the investigation.
So that's an interesting news piece. We really have two different stories that come out of that. One is the polygraph. He did take a polygraph, according to him. Although he didn't share the results, he sure gave a pretty strong hint as to what the results may have been. Were you able to maybe read between the lines of what he was saying?
Oh yeah, he passed with flying colors.
I just don't know why he bothered saying, like, I don't think I can say it, but let's just say it was good in my favor.
It's like, okay, well, you just said it.
A polygraph test, for what it's worth, he took it, and according to him, I guess it seems like it worked out well, which probably means that he passed it. But even saying, like, passed a lie detector test doesn't mean someone isn't involved in something. It just means that the test didn't find any evidence of them being deceptive. Right. But even if the tests even work, there's a big kind of asterisk at that, because a lot of people think of it as a pseudoscience. But regardless, it's what it tells me is Daniel seems to be trying to do everything he can to clear his name. He's on the news talking all the time. We do know that his phone was given to the RCMP. He took a polygraph, for whatever that's worth, and the results seem to be favorable for him.
But
I don't know what else he can do.
Even if they weren't, because a polygraph isn't admissible in court. Let's say he failed the polygraph. Is that even grounds to make an arrest, like legally on the RCMP's part? No, exactly. So
it's just like a bluff. It's something where I want to interview you, but I want to put you off guard. So I'm going to do it in the guise of a lie detector polygraph test. And I think it's just a way that the RCMP will make an interview even more intense. Like if I want to ask you, if you have a potential roommate, let's say, coming, or a tenant for your apartment that's going to be, someone's going to be renting your apartment, you have a tenant coming over, you just ask them a few questions, they'll answer it. And maybe you can get a good sense of if they're a good tenant or roommate or whatever. But if you're like, let's sit down, I'm going to hook you up to this polygraph machine, it'll tell me if you're lying. They're just like, whoa, okay, like what the hell? Like that's kind of what it's used for. It's just to
scare you.
Bring up the tension. It's just, it's like a pseudoscience that kicks the hornet's nest and really ramps things up. But anyway, for whatever it's worth, a lot of people have been saying, why doesn't Daniel why don't the police give Daniel a polygraph? Seems like they did, and it seems like there was no evidence of deception. We don't know what the questions they asked were. I'm sure one of the questions, if this even did happen, and I have no reason to think it didn't, it's not coming from the RCMP, it's coming from him. But if it did happen, one of the questions were probably, getting him to repeat the timeline of when the children were last seen. There was probably a direct question. Did you have any involvement in the children going missing? Was there foul play involved in the disappearance of the children? Did you and Malaya oversee the disappearance of the children? Are you covering something up related to the disappearance of the children? I imagine it was questions like that.
For sure it was. And the more he talks, the more I trust him. Like the less suspicious he seems to be. Because if at this point, if he's lying, he is going to go down as like one of the world's best sociopaths. Because I don't know. I really don't think he had anything to do with it now.
Yeah. I feel each day that passes, I feel more and more like he's being honest and sincere and genuine, in that he's really stepping up as a stepfather for these kids. He says himself, and we'll talk about the second aspect of that news appearance by him. He gives more information on his breakup with Malaya. As he says himself, he said, I'm the only one here doing media for Jack and Lilly, and I'm trying to keep the story alive. And I think that's honest. Like the polygraph built into my brain, he found no signs of deception in that statement. He has every justification to not appear on the news all the time.
Totally. And
he is helping keep the story alive, because by him appearing and talking, it triples, if not quadruples, if not 10 times the amount of views that any news report's going to get. Because the headline can now be Stepfather says, rather than RCMP says.
Well, and I wonder if he was responsible in any way for Lilly and Jack's disappearance, I feel like they would have figured him out by now. Like it's been a month. If he didn't have anything to do with it, at this point they would have figured it out.
We get a bit of information on the status of him and Malaya. They have not spoken since the day after the disappearance, by the sounds of it. And it seems like the RCMP kind of has someone who's keeping them both informed of the investigation. So when there's a development...
Well, I'd hope so.
Yeah, I guess they're calling Malaya, calling Daniel. And
I wonder if it's the cops saying maybe don't speak to each other. If she's got a lawyer that's just saying shut up for now, lay low. This is all speculation on my part.
Why? Of course, but it just seems like that would all be so unnecessary if it's just a missing persons case.
Yeah, I don't know.
A missing persons case, as if a children wandered away case. It just seems like such overkill and unnecessary.
But there's so much public speculation. So I wonder if it's just if they would do that just to cover their own ass. I don't know.
Yeah, and protect their privacy and whatever. Like they like it or not, they've become what I refer to as a tragic celebrity. Someone who is now a celebrity and in the public eye due to their connection with a tragic case. Daniel and Malaya will forever be known by this publicly. You will search their name on Google in 30 years and all these articles about this case will come up.
Well, it's kind of like John Benet Ramsey's parents.
Yep.
30 some years down the road, and there are people that still think they had something to do with their daughter's murder. So yeah.
Well, let's take our final break. When we get back, we'll have our last update of the week, and this update in a way will bring us back to the beginning, but also in a way just make everything we've said up to now almost redundant or irrelevant. Let's have a break and we'll get back with that. All right, Madelayne, we can end our week of updates with what's probably going to come across as a rerun for some people. The RCMP again shared a press release informing the public that over this weekend that we're recording this in the middle of now, they will again be hosting a ground search in the area surrounding the children's home, the same spot that was searched many, many times. Let's listen to a short news clip about it, and then we can talk about what this may mean. Here it comes.
It's been 4 weeks since Lilly and Jack Sullivan were reported missing, and RCMP say ground crews are returning to Pictou County to continue the search. The RCMP says searchers from ground search and rescue teams will focus on specific areas around Gairloch Road and the pipeline trail that's close by, where a boot print was previously located. Police are asking the public to avoid the search to allow the trained searchers to do their work, adding any future searches will be determined as the investigation goes on.
So not a lot of info there, other than it seems like they're continuing to focus on what's referred to as the pipeline trail, which is a kind of a gravelly road type area, which is where the what was thought to possibly be a boot print was found early on in the search. They're continuing to search this area. Reading between the lines, this area is very important to them because this trail also leads towards the area where the trail cam footage was requested by that homeowner that we heard about last week. So it's my thought that whatever theories the police are working on involves the street or this trail or whatever you want to call it. Could it be that they're looking at the possibility that the children just walked up this trail and wandered off somewhere? Or are the police pursuing an idea that people traveled on this road maybe prior to the disappearance of the children? Because again, they're looking for footage of the area. So I don't know where to take this other than, again, there's another ground search happening over this weekend that we're recording this in the middle of. At this point, we don't have any results of that search, but I'm not expecting a breakthrough because anything they're searching now should have been searched several times.
But like they said, the areas that they're searching, they have reason to.
Yeah.
Or
So
researching,
why?
I should say.
Yeah, like what new development has led them to come back there? Could it have been a tip? Could it have just been they're not 100% sure in the success or the 100% sure of how conclusive the prior searches were?
Yeah,
Whatever it is, it's interesting.
They could have also, found some sort of large piece of evidence that they're just not sharing with the public right now.
Of course, yeah.
So
it's always a possibility.
Yeah, they got to keep things under wrap until they're like sure.
Yeah.
So.
But I do believe they're getting close. All of these developments point us to, we don't know what the theory is that they're working on, but it's clear that they're working on a theory because the communication from the RCMP has been pretty specific. We want footage of the days leading up to the disappearance, and we're searching on the ground in this specific area. So there is some theory that they're working on that involves the days leading up to the disappearance and this pipeline trail. I think that's what we know for sure.
I don't know. I really hope. What do you think? Do you think maybe perhaps they could still be alive with someone?
It is possible. Like if this was an abduction, they haven't found human remains. They haven't found anything that would imply that harm came to the children, with the exception of the fact that the children have disappeared. But could you imagine the twist in this if the children were abducted and were successfully found and freed?
This case has already defied all odds. So maybe.
And that would be the best solution at this point. The best outcome.
That would be amazing. Oh, imagine.
It is a possibility. It's like, things like that have happened. This would be a very, very high profile instance of that if that's how this ends. But I think, I feel like that outcome is probably more probable than the children are found to have just met their end in the forest just behind their house. Like, I think
It's just, the search has been so thorough. And I don't, like, a month on, I don't think they've just missed them.
Yeah, and we've kind of tracked this a little bit in our weekly updates, but when the first searches happened, there wouldn't have been leaves on the trees.
No.
And the grass and bushes and all that wouldn't have filled in. Now, a month later, it's like we're recording this on the 1st of June. It's a completely different scene in that forest now than it would have been during the first search. So I think anything that was missed during the first search, highly unlikely it's going to be found anytime until, after fall when all the leaves are off the trees.
Right.
But I think with all of this said, it's just been another busy week in this case. Every day it seems like there's something new. We've had, over this week, I think there were 3 press releases from the police. The first one we heard about narrowing down the timeline. There was a press release they said they sent explaining that they're going to do a search this weekend. They sent a separate press release Saturday morning just saying that the search was going to continue into Sunday. We had Daniel discussing his polygraph with the media, which was a big development. And now we have the third search, and who knows what that'll bring. But all of that said, to say, things are happening in this case, and the public is not going to let it go silent.
How close do you think we are? Another week or two?
I feel like we're within a month of a significant development. I think more likely about 2 weeks, though. That's what I'm thinking at this point. Either a discovery or an arrest, I think is within a month away.
I totally agree with you.
And I think given the amount of interviews that have happened, there is a huge team of investigators working on this case. You don't see it publicly because you hear of the ground search and you see the media person giving their, talking to the cameras. But there is a whole room of police officers who are going through people's stories, seeing what fits and what doesn't. And I think they're narrowing it down pretty quick.
I think they already have like an idea. I think everything behind the scenes, they know what's going on. They just have to make damn sure before they do anything.
Yeah.
So I think but in like 2 weeks, you're right.
And if that is true, like if they know what happened and they're just trying to prove some detail to be fact or a lie or whatever, it seems like footage in the days prior to the disappearance is what's going to break the case, because they've asked for that multiple times from the public.
And hopefully they get it. I don't know. They're not going to announce when they've received footage or not. And also, we have to remember that footage also takes time to go through.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm sure they could speed it up a little, but someone has to watch all of that footage.
Yeah, hundreds of hours, I'm sure. But the thing is where this is such a rural area, remote area, what are the chances that someone was driving with a dash cam that's recording all day? Like, most cars don't have a dash cam that's just always recording. You have like your backup camera and stuff, but like a dash cam that's just recording all the time, most cars don't have that. Hopefully someone managed to pass through this community at the right time with that camera recording. But I guess, the police aren't going to tell us that they got it.
No.
But we'll know that they got what they were looking for when we hear that they solved the case. I want to thank you for joining us for this episode of Nighttime. Before I end here, I want to send positive vibes to everyone affected by this case. And I also want to send a sincere thank you to everyone searching for Jack and Lilly. This is truly a nightmare scenario, and I think everyone out there feels the same way I do. When kids go missing, everything else takes second priority. Now, with that said, I'm going to start wrapping up this episode, but before I do, I want to end with some thanks. First, a big thanks to Madelayne Klein for joining us for this episode. A shout out to Monty Datta, who contributes the music for this show, and Linz from the Dystopian Simulation podcast, who provides our intro and outro voiceovers. And then lastly, but most importantly, a massive thank you goes out to each and every one of you listening to Nighttime, as without your interest and your support, this show would be as pointless as it would be impossible. On the topic of support, let me thank the newest subscribers to the premium feed. Jennifer, Nicole, and Jamie, we appreciate you. And for anyone else who'd like to support the show, you can do it in a variety of ways. First of all, a premium feed subscription costs just a couple bucks a month, and that money will fund the creation of new episodes. But the premium feed will also give you those new episodes 2 days early, give them to you ad-free, and give you access to a back catalog of episodes. That sounds like something you're interested in? You can go premium at nighttimepodcast.com/subscribe. And even if you don't want to go premium, you can still support the show by sharing this episode on social media and letting all your like-minded friends know why they should listen. Your support is very much appreciated. Now, until next time, take care of each other, hug your loved ones tight, and let me know if you see anything weird.
The Nighttime Podcast is written, hosted, and produced by Jordan Bonaparte.